Hello everyone. This is our first of the two lectures on creating macros in Microsoft Excel and writing code in VBA. So VBA is Visual Basic for Applications, which is used alongside with Microsoft Excel, as you can see here, to write basically more sophisticated algorithms for using with an Excel sheet and creating macro buttons and more basically interactive worksheets. So in the previous lectures of Excel, you saw how we can basically perform all sorts of different tasks inside the Excel sheet. So I can read the value from one cell and use it somewhere else for some calculation, or from one sheet in another sheet, and so on. We learn about absolute referencing, relative referencing, and so on. Now here we try to add some macros, basically some code behind the scene that, let's say, when you push on a push button, it performs some jobs, and that code behind the scene can interact with the cells and range of cells in the Excel sheet, can get some values from you, can display some values for you, and so on and so forth. So the first thing you need is you need the developer tab here, up here. Many times when you come here and open Microsoft Excel, you might not see this developer tab because by default it is not active. So if you want to add it over there, you go to Files and go to Options, and then you go to the Customize ribbon and make sure this guy here, this check mark, is there. Typically it's not. If you add it and OK that, then the Developer tab shows itself up here. And you have the button for Visual Basic, or Visual Basic for Application, basically VBA, which takes you behind the scenes so you can write the code. And if you click on this View Microsoft Excel, it takes you back to the worksheets. And if you want to add push buttons or other buttons, you can go here under Insert, and then you can add the command button, you can add checkbox, you can add slider, spin button, radio button, option button, and so on and so forth, right? Adding images and so on. Right now we're going to deal with one of the simplest and yet most important things, a command button, right? So we want to insert a command button, add code for it, so when you push it, it does something for you, right? So I'm going to go through each and every one of these, and the topics that I have considered for today's lecture are basically adding the developer tab that I just told you, trusting the macros so you can run them, and saving your Excel file as a macro enabled so you can easily run it, then adding macro buttons, adding subroutines for them, modifying the appearance of these buttons. And then behind the scene, you can add comments, declare variables, create MsgBox, InputBox, so basically input and output, or output and input. I show you how to make decisions by logical operators using if, then, else, and switch, how to read values from cells, how to write to the cells, and then finally how to change the color of cells. These are the topics for this lecture, and for next lecture, I'm going to be talking about functions, loops, strings, arrays, and events, okay? So we can create lots of lectures on VBA, but I would rather squeeze a bunch of topics in one video. So let's get started. So if we want to add a button, we just go under Insert and click here on this command button, and then click anywhere we want. It adds a button for us. You see the command for it is to embed forms command button 1. And when it adds this button, now you can modify it. You can modify the text for it, the name for it, the color of the text, the color of the button, and everything for that matter. All you need is, when you right click on it, go to what? Properties. Or when you simply one left click on it, go up here into Properties. And here you can give it a name. So you might say, for example, say hello. That's the name of this behind the scene when you want to create a subroutine, a code for it. It is recognized by this name, say hello. But whatever is shown on this button here, that's under caption. So you might say hello. What's the difference? Again, the caption is the pure text that you see on the button. This is the name of the subroutine associated with it. Also here, you cannot use spaces or dots or something. You just need to use letters, numbers, and underscore. While here, you can use a space or anything that you want, right? So here, I have given it the text on it, and then I can go ahead and change the font of it, right? So it is Calibri, and it's not bold font. So if I come here and click on it, I can make it bold font. If I don't like Calibri, I can make it, let's say, Times New Roman or anything that I like. I can change the font size, right? So now if I go back, look, you see, now it is bigger font, darker font, and different font. If I want to change the color of this, I go here, it says back color. I click here, go there, and then click on the palette, and then choose whatever color that I want, right? And you can change lots of other things here. So many options. I leave it up to you to explore them. But this is basically how to add a button and modify some basic appearance of it, right? Now that I have added this button, I want to do something with it. When I click on it, I want it to do something. So I right click here and say what? View code. And when I say so, it takes me to the VBA tab, which you can also access here by clicking on Visual Basic. And here it is adding for you a private subroutine. You see, the name of it is called say hello underscore click, which means the name of it is say hello, and it works when you click on it. And here inside this, I would write whatever I want to happen when I click on the push button, right? So what do I want it to do? As the name of the push button says, I want to show a message box and say, hey, hello world, whatever, something like that. So I use the built-in function message box, and I say hello and welcome to VBA lecture 1, right? To macros and VBA lecture 1. That's all it is. When I click on it, it should show that message in a message box. So now if I go back here, I can run it. The only thing you have to pay attention is right now it is in the design mode, if you see. So if you click on it, it doesn't let you click. It just let you basically resize this, replace it, and so on. If you want to be able to run it, click on design mode and turn it off. Now you can click on it, and there we go. You see the message box appears and it shows whatever text that you wanted it to show, correct? So that's one way to run your code, is now by clicking on it. Or if you go back to Visual Basic also, you can come here, click inside the area for the private sub, and then you can click on the run here as well. And that does the same job, okay? So this is for a simple thing, right? Adding code to it and modifying the appearance. Now we want to talk a little bit more about the code, and we want to raise the bar, right? Not everything is as simple as clicking on a button and saying hello or something. We want to deal with the values in the cells. We want to create variables, declare variables, get some inputs from the user, maybe through an input box, make some decisions, do some logicals, read and write to the cells, even change the color of some cells, select cells, and so on. So we want to do more advanced tasks. Like what? For example, here, what I have is a code that when you click on it, first let me show you what happens, then we go behind the scene and see what is going on. If I click on this one, it's called area of a rectangle. First, it shows an input message box, right? This is very similar to the message box, but this is an input box. So it is giving you a message, enter length, enter a positive number, and then it says what? Enter the length. So it waits for you to enter some number and say okay. When you do, it takes it and assigns it behind the scene to a variable. Then it brings the next one and say, okay, what's the width? You say 3. And you okay that, and now it says the area of the rectangle is what? Of course, 5 by 3, which is 15. So how does it do it, right? Let's see how it does that. So we go here and we look at the code. So the name of it is clearly rectangle area underscore click. That's what I named it. And what it does, anytime you are using some values, some variables, you have to declare them. In order to declare them, use the dim to declare them, and then you say as, and then you say the type of the variable. So you say length is a variable of type double, the same for width, the same for area. Length and width are the thing you get from the user. Area is what you calculate inside the code. You might say, should I declare something for this area as well? Absolutely. If you name it something, you have to declare it. Now, double precision floating number is not the only variable type you have in Excel. There are other types of variables that you can use in VBA, and they are integer, long, single, string, boolean, and variant. What's the difference here? To see the difference, we are going to refer to Microsoft documents about it. And by the way, there are some other types of variables too. So it's not just these. There is date variable, there is currency variable, and etc. But these are the ones, the number categories. This is the string, this is of its own, and so on. But these are the most used. But of course, if you're dealing with currency or date all the time, then maybe these are the most used for you. But again, if you want to know about it, go to Microsoft Documents, and you see the Boolean is 2 byte. It's either true or false. You even have one format called byte, which we are not super interested right now. Currency, you have 8 bytes. Date, again, it's 8 bytes. You have decimal, right? You have dictionary, double, but double is really an 8-byte decimal, which can go from this e to the positive 308 to e to the negative 324 for negative values. So it can go very, very large, very, very small, and it can store decimals, right? Floating points. And if you don't want to use that much, you can just use the decimal, okay? So the decimal, let's see. Well, actually, it is more bytes than double, so it was single then. Yes, single precision is 4 bytes. It's floating. So the decimal is even more memory compared to double. Single is less memory. We have string, we have integer, we have long integer for bigger, we have long integer, and so on. And we have variant. Variant is an interesting one. It can change its type during the operation of the code, okay? And that could be a nice one. And by the way, there are commands here. Let me mention them since we are here. There are commands that can do type conversion, or we call typecasting. For example, if you have a number and you want to convert it to an integer, you can use the command to string, you use the command cstr, which is convert to string. Or if you have a string that you can convert to a number or a currency maybe, you can use the command cdbl, which is convert to double, convert to date, convert to currency, convert to boolean, right? So just keep in mind that we have different types of variables, and we can convert some of them to some others, and we have some commands like isArray, isEmpty, isNull, isNumeric, and so on to check what type of data they are. Okay, so I'm not going to go in deep of that because you can check it on your own. I want to show you more about this coding here, really. So what I had here was I have them as double, and then I use the command InputBox. The command InputBox is what I showed you. It has a box title that says below it, it is waiting for you to enter something, and it has a title. Now here you see that the title and the basically box prompt are reversed. So you really should, if you want the title to be enter length and enter a positive number is the prompt, you have to bring the prompt first. So you have to say something like this. Okay, and then something similar for the width, right? So this way, enter length and enter width are going to be the titles, and then enter a positive number is going to be the prompt. So they show the message box to you, they wait for you to type some number and say okay, then they get them and assign them to these two variables. Then area is calculated by, of course, length times width, and then you show the result using a message box. Now here your message box is not showing a pure text like last time, just showing hello world or welcome or something. If it's just a pure text, all you need is to show it inside double quotation marks. But sometimes you need to mix text and variables together, right? So you want to say that area of the rectangle equals, and this is a text that never changes, and you want to add the value for this area that your code has calculated, and this one can change from one time to another because you might enter different numbers. So this area is a variable, it can change. How do I mix this text with this variable? Use the AND operator. Okay, this way you can have a mix of text and variable in the message box. So let's go ahead and run it one more time just for you to see. Turn off the design mode, click on this guy, and here I can enter decimals. Remember, I declared them as a double. So 5.6, and then what is this? Let's say 3.8. And it says the area of the rectangle is 2128. But you see clearly now that the title is right and the prompt is right, okay? And you can cancel it as well, right? If you don't want to run it. So this is, as I said, to declare a variable, to talk about different types of variables, to just show you at least that there is typecasting. If I have time, I'll show you a little bit more about typecasting. And use input box, use message box, combine text and numbers together. One other thing that you see are these lines in green, and these are comments. If you want to have a comment, which basically the VBA engine doesn't care what you type over there, it's just for further clarification and information about your code, you can start them after a single quotation mark, then it is a comment. Like in MATLAB, whatever that you start after person sign is a comment. Here it is after a single quotation mark. Okay, so this is some of the stuff that I wrote over here for you, right? Basically, so far I have covered these areas. And let me mark them down so we know we have covered them. Now we want to go a little bit further. This time we're going to calculate the area of an ellipse, but we want to write a little bit smarter, better code. Because here, the message box, you entered any number in it and it multiplied them and gave it to you. So even if you entered a negative number, it didn't care for the length or width, or if you entered 0. So now you want to make sure if you entered invalid numbers, first of all, it doesn't take them and act on them, does something different, handles invalid inputs. The other thing is, this time I do not want to get the inputs from entering them in the input box. This time I want to read those numbers by whatever I type in a specific cells. So now I want to read from cells in that code, and then whatever the result is, I'm gonna write it to this cell, right? So I'm gonna read the numbers from cells C9 and C10 for semi-major and semi-minor axis length, and then write the area right where? Right in line 11, right? So how do I do that? Okay, so let's look behind the scenes, see what it is doing, and then we are going to come here and run it. So if we go back, again, you see I have comments and stuff, and I have declared semi-major, semi-minor, A and B as double, and then area, or this time I call it area 1 as double, and then how do I now read the values of those cells? So here I'm using the command cell, or the object cells, and I'm using what we call the method.value, or the function.value for it. So this is an object, and it has this function or method that will work. And what it does, it goes to that cell identified by the row number and column number. So you don't say A3 or C3 or whatever. You say 9-3. What does that mean? 3 means C and 9 means 9. So this is C9 really. Read it from C9, and that is here. Right? Read it, call it A. Read the one from C10, call it B. Right, so the dot value will get the value of that cell. There are other methods too for a cell object. You might say like what? For example, if you say cells, let's say 12 and 3 dot select, this one is not going to get the value for it. It's just going to select it as if you are clicking like here, right? Here, when I'm clicking and selecting the cell, highlighting the cell, that's the same thing that this command does. Okay, so the command cell has a bunch of methods, and you can see them here when you say cells dot. These are all sorts of different methods or functions that you have. Cell clear comment, right? You have all sorts of things here, and then at the bottom you have what? Value, right? This is the select I told you. Let me get it. Right, there is run, there is sort, and so on, resize, remove. So all of these are the things that you can use aligned with this object called cells. So you get the values, then what? Here is handling invalid inputs. You say if any of them is negative, then use the absolute value of them. So don't throw an error, just take the absolute value of the negative number. Now, how do I do that? First of all, I use the command if, which is kind of common in all sorts of programming languages for handling different conditions and decision making. So you have if some conditions, then. This is also another keyword that you have to observe. If condition happens, then you do something. By the way, one thing that is clear here, a difference between Excel and MATLAB that you can see, is at the end of the lines we should not use a semicolon. In MATLAB it was optional. If we did, it suppresses the result. Here, if we do, it's not going to like it. Immediately gives you an error. Okay, so here is absolutely prohibited. So the other thing is or. So you can combine conditions together using or, using and, not, and so on. Okay, so we have these logical operators, or, and, not, and so on, and we have the comparators to create a logical value. So if a is less than 0, the value of it is either true or false. So if one of them is negative, then use the absolute value. Then if you don't want to finish it and you want to add more branches, right, kind of have what we call a nested if, you can use else if. You say else if one of them is 0, then don't do anything, right? Just say cell values must not be 0. Show that as a message box. Else, if none of them is happening, now what? Go ahead and change the color of those cells. This is one of those functions or methods of the object cell. It's called interior.color. So what does it do? It changes the interior color of those cells that you read some values from, and it uses the command RGB, red, green, and blue components, to change the color. So the first component is red, the next one is green, the next one is blue. So when you only set up, and the values that you can specify for each one of these three variables is between 0 to 255. 255 is max, 0 is the min. So when you say no red, no blue, only full green, it's gonna turn that cell to complete green. This one, I'm gonna turn it into complete red, no green component, no blue component. If you add some numbers here, and it's not just pure red or green or blue, it's gonna give you other colors, right? Please just refer to what we call RGB color space, and you'll see any color, it has a mixture of these three. So by mixing a proper ratio of R, G, and B, you can make any color. Like for example, if all of them are 255, the color is going to be white. If all of them are 0, it's going to be black. If all of them are equal but less than 255, it's going to be gray, and so on and so forth, right? So you can combine R, G, and B and make any color. So here I'm changing also the color of them. Now they are good. I just changed the color of them, and then whenever your if is over, you have to indicate that to VBA. Say end of if. In MATLAB also you have to use the keyword end, but not end of if, but end. But here you have to say end of if. One other thing I wanted to mention is here you see these two logical values, a less than 0 and b less than 0. One of them could be false or true, or the other one. I put them inside parentheses, then combine them using OR. In this bottom case, I didn't. I just wanted, the only reason I did it this way, I wanted to tell you it does not matter if you put them in parentheses or not. If you are not sure about which operation will happen first, it's always a good idea to put them in parentheses, because inside parentheses has the highest priority in any operation. Okay, so it's a good idea to put it inside parentheses, but in this case it's too simple and there is no need to put it inside parentheses. One other thing I want to mention is, for you that know MATLAB as well, in MATLAB when two variables are equal, we want to check whether they are equal or not, or a variable is equal to a number or not, we use double equal sign. So equal sign we use for allocation of a number to a variable, or assignment we call it. Double equal is to check whether they are equal or not, and the result is a true or false. Here, both of them are just equal sign. There is no double equal. If you do that, again, it is going to pick on you. Okay, so there is no double equal in here. Okay, so here, we read them. If they were negative, we use absolute value of them. If they are 0, we are just going to show an error message. If they are good, then we also going to highlight the cells we read the values from by changing their colors, basically. Now I want to get the area of the ellipse. So I multiply A by B, semi-minor by semi-minor by semi-major, and I need to multiply by pi. If you remember back when we worked in Excel, we had the function pi, right? So I can say this guy is equal to what? Pi, right? And it gives me pi. The thing is, when you work in VBA, the VBA does not have a function pi by itself. So if you don't do what I just did and just say pi, or even if you use capital pi times AB and try to do it, it is going to give you an error, because VBA does not have a function pi separately. So what you need to do is to tell it, hey, use the function that the worksheet does, and that function is called pi. So if your worksheet Excel worksheet has a function that the VBA does not have. A way to use it is to say worksheet function dot and then provide the name of that function. This way you can use the functions existing in the worksheet but not in VBA in your code. Okay, so this is another important thing. So it is pi times AB. Good, we got it. And now I want to write this value to cell C11. So I just say cell 11.3.value equals area 1. So it is going to write the result right here. So it reads the value from here and then write it here. Okay, and also change the color of these two cells to green and red. And then here I did something also nicer for you. And that is I add a bunch of stars around the result. So I'm gonna put a bunch of stars in all of these cells basically, like all of these. Just the boundary of this range, right? So the boundary of this range, I'm gonna put stars all over it. So I kind of like put a box or something of stars around it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. And the reason I did it, I wanted to show you the command range or the object range. So the range is very similar to cells. Cells only deal with one cell, range deal with several cells, a range of cells. So you say go to the range from A8 to D8 and set the value of all of them to what? To 3 stars. Now, since 3 stars are not numbers, you cannot just say equal to 3 stars like this because they are not numbers. So you cannot say dot value. But if you put them in double quotation, means they are strings. So don't care what it is. Just directly take it, copy it, and paste it to cells A8 to D8, which is where here. If you go, this is A8 to D8. So here. So fill those 4 cells for me with double stars. Then the next line is fill this area with double star, fit this area with the stars, and then fit this area with the stars. So just fill all the boundary with the stars, and actually triple stars, not double stars. Okay, so just wanted to show you that there is the command cell and there is the command range if you want to read values from more than one cell or write values to more than one cell. You can use the command range.value. And before I finish this and run it, I wanted to show you one more thing. Sometimes the cells that you want to read from or write to, they are not in the current worksheet. You see here, I'm reading stuff from sheet 1, I'm writing to sheet 1. Sometimes in sheet 1, you are in sheet 1, but you want to read some values from sheet number 4, right? Or another sheet. So how do I do that? I add something here behind range. I say what? Worksheets 1. So if I want, I can say worksheets what? 4. Go to worksheet number 4, go to the range C3 to, let's say, F3, for example, right? And then the value of all of them, set it to what? Set it to area 1, correct? So I can set that to area 1. Here I can show you actually. See this sheet 2, I said C to F, that's good. So let's do it actually. Let me uncomment this. So it's gonna go to worksheet number 2 and the cells C3 to F3, it's gonna also write the result of this area to those cells for you when you run it, okay? So here I'm showing you a bunch of different functions and methods for different objects. So let's go ahead. So here I type some numbers, let's say 5 and 2, correct? So when I click on it, it reads these two guys, they are okay. So it calculates the area, put it here, change the color of these two, put a bunch of stars around it, and also comes to this sheet and also type the numbers over here as well, right? So let's do it. Here we go. So the area is clearly pi times 10, and pi is 3.142, so it is 31.42. The color of this is green, the color of that is red, all the stars are over here, and if you go to sheet 2, you see that 31 is added to cells C3 to F3, right? So each and every one of the lines worked as expected, correct? Now, to see the effect of this if, I'm going to go and change it a little bit. So I go back here, and maybe this time I change one of these numbers to a -2, right? And if I run it again, -3, let's say. So now that it's -3, look, it didn't throw an error, it didn't show a negative number in the area. Because if I didn't handle it properly, it would say, hey, it's going to be -15 times pi, which is -47.12, right? Because my formula is simply what? Pi times AB. But here in this if statement, I'm cleaning up for A and B. If A and B are not done right, if they are negative, I'm taking the absolute value of them. Okay, right? Or if they are 0, I might show a 0, but then I show you a message box and say, hey, cell values must not be 0. Please try again, right? So look here. If I go back this time and I change this number to 0 and I run it again, you see? It says cell values must not be 0. Please try again. Now, it does write that 0 over there, and the 0 is over here, but it is warning you that, hey, you should not be really doing a 0. So now if you go and change it back to 3 and run it again, now it does do it properly. Now, can I do something here in my code that if it's 0, it doesn't go all the way down and calculate and do all of this stuff? Yes, I can if I want to. Okay, I can use a break command. So if that's the case, show a message box and don't do anything else. Here, I haven't done it, but in my next lecture, I'll show you how to control the logic and the flow of your code. Okay? When I go over loops and controlling logic and so on, I'll show you more about it. So here is the first or basic lecture. So I covered making decisions with if then else, logical operators, reading values to cells, ranges, and worksheets, and coloring of the cells. So I kind of covered them all. There is one more thing that I haven't talked about, and that's making a decision using the switch command. And for that, I'm going to use this last one. And in this last one, not only I show you a switch command, I also show you to use the current date and time, basically. Right? So when I click on this now switch demo, when I click on it, it comes and reads the value of year, month, and date, which is the current month, year, and date from here. Now the year and the day are numbers, but the month is in letters, it's a string. So what it does, it compares this string against the 12 options that you have for a month, right, from January to December. And based on this is which one of them it considers a number for that month. So if it's August, it's considered to be month number 8. So then it populates under this tomorrow for you. It says if today is 16 of August 2021, tomorrow is going to be 17 of month 8 and 2021. So not only it adds a number to this 16 and make it 17, it converts this August to month 8 and put it up here. And then down below here in front of now, it will show you the current date, time, and all relevant information right here. Okay, so it does several things at the same time. And the reason is I told you I want to show you a bunch of things in this short video. So what is this code doing here? Here, first of all, I clicked on it, so you see what it is doing. So it recognized that August is 8, it recognized that 16 should be 17, and it tells you that now is 8/16/2021 and it is 12:47 p.m. Okay, now what is it doing behind the scene? Again, we can go and take a look here, and this is this code on the top. So it reads the day, the month, and the day and the year. It reads them as double, but month it reads as string because I type in August. This MM is the equivalent of the month, but when it is converted into double. So first you see it reads those from cells B, 16, 17, and 18. And then here now use a switch. Now in Excel or VBA actually, instead of having the name switch, it is called select. So select is the same thing as switch. So you say select case, and then you provide the name of the variable that can take over different cases. You say, look at this variable month. In case it is January, and since it's a string, I have to compare it to string, so I put it in double quotation. The equivalent number for it, set it to 1. If it's February, do 2 all the way. If it's December, set it to what? To 12. Else is a case that is none of these. MsgBox invalid month name. So if you entered a name in that cell number B17 that is anything other than this 12 month, so it's an invalid input, it is going to throw a MsgBox error at you. And when the switch or the select is over, again use the word end. You say end of select, end it. Now that we know what is the equivalent number for the month, what should you do? Go ahead and put it in cell 17.5, which is basically E17. Put the year in E16. Put the day plus 1, which is tomorrow, to cell E18. And then go ahead and in E21 show now. This now is a function. It returns the current date as a date variable. Okay, so the result of this is a date variable, and it shows that string of date variable right in home or cell E21. Okay, so that's what you saw over here. Okay, now of course this code is not perfect. Why? Because in case your day is at the end of the month, when you say tomorrow, it should change both day and month. Or if it's the last day of the year, it should change the year as well. So here, this code is just assuming that the day is a day inside a month, not at the end of the month, not at the end of the year. So all you need is to update the day. But if you want to write a good code, you have to consider all those separate scenarios. And that's where you need to use if, select, which is the same as switch, or a combination of which. Okay, so here is very simplified. It's not really that simple if you want to have today and then convert it to tomorrow. Okay, so these are some of the important material that you might need to know for creating your first macros, your first 3 buttons here. I showed you all sorts of things. I showed you the say hello and how to create the subroutine for them. One other thing that I need to mention is sometimes you might come here and click on this button, but it doesn't run. It gives you an error message and say, hey, I cannot run it. One of the reasons is here under micro security. If you click here, it takes you to the Trust Center under options. You can access here also by going to Files, Options, going to the Trust Center, and then click here on Trust Center Setting, and then go to Micro Setting. Okay, and most of the time this checkbox is off by default. Trust access to VBA project object model. If that is off, you might get an error when trying to run your macro. So make sure this guy is on. That's one thing. The other thing is if you go and file and save as, and if you look at the types of the files, you have Excel workbook, and there is something called Excel micro enabled workbook. I suggest you save it as the second one, Excel micro enabled workbook. This way you make sure that it enables macros to work with your Excel sheet. Okay, so these are some extra options that I wanted to tell you. Okay, and finally, before I finish the video, since I told you I will tell you something about at least a typecasting or a type conversion. So here I added one line to my subroutine, and here that I get the command now, use the current date and time and show it in cell E21, I will convert that date variable into a double format. So I use the cast or convert to double and show the equivalent number for that in cell what? E23. What does that mean? Let's go and take a look here. So when I click here, this is the current date and time. This is the equivalent what? This is the double of now, basically, right? Converting that now into double. But what does that mean, really? Well, if I click on it, so look, 27, 29, 32, 35, 38. Do you see something? Yes. How much this guy gets updated, how much does it add to it each time I click? It's the amount of seconds that goes between my clicks. You see here, 14 seconds. Let's count. 1, 2, 3 here. You see? Let's do it again. So 1, 2, 3. You see? So it's the number of seconds that is passed between each time that you click and the next time on this button, because the command now gets updated every time you call it. And so the double of now will also get updated. So what is this double conversion doing really? It is converting your date and time, all of it, to an equivalent in seconds. And every time you click, that number of seconds gets or the minutes or hours, depending on how often you click on this button, it gets updated, right? So that's what this typecasting does, converting the whole date time variable into what? Into equivalent seconds, and show it as a number with decimals, right? So clearly you see the last digit is the number of seconds. That's what it is. Okay, so hopefully this lecture was useful to you, and I covered, even though briefly, the typecasting as well, and using worksheet functions for you and current date and time. So these are the topics we covered in this lecture. As I said, in the next lecture we are going to cover these 5 important topics as well, and hopefully that gives you enough starting motion so you can write your own macros and your own VBA code. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.